All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We're very excited to have this presentation. I'm going to share my screen so you can see the beautiful slides that I put together. Just to give you a little bit of a welcome from the Florida chapter, my name is Bethany Aguad. I'm the SEC Florida chapter president. I'm just going to take a few minutes to give you all some updates about, what's going on with the chapter and things we're celebrating, and then I will hand it off to Jessica to introduce our speaker. All right, so just a quick thing on the agenda. We had our networking from 6:30 to 7, and now we're getting ready to go into our presentation with Barrie Byron, and then we'll have a closing and be wrapped up, hopefully, unless the party doesn't stop around 8:30, which has happened before. I did want to share for those who are STC members that the STC election results were announced, and there were I see Alex is responding. Yeah, we have our Asa Moyna is now succeeding as president. We have Tim Esposito as vice president. He's a friend of a lot of folks in the chapter, so very excited to see him become VP, and then he will become STC president in the future. Liat Rathbrun is secretary, and then especially want to highlight for directors, we have Danielle Villegas, that's friends with a lot of us, but especially our own Lori Meyer is going to be going up to the board. So I was hoping Lori would be on. If she joins later, we'll make sure we give her a proper round of applause. But just highlight also we have Kylie Jacobson on nominating committee and Miranda Studevant, who's done some presentations for our chapter, also elected to the nominating committee. So there's a lot of familiar names here, people that we've crossed paths with here. So it's exciting to see them moving up into STC leadership. And I did want to especially give a round of applause for Lori, but I'll come back to this if she joins later because I'm very excited about what she's going to do on the board and the perspective she can bring as someone who's been so involved with our members and our community. Just a couple other things. Our next meeting is going to be our employment panel. That'll be on April 21st. So I'll be sending out some details about that in not too long. I also want to mention it's not too late to register for the STC Summit for anyone who has not decided to go. I know it's a little late in the game, but you could still go to Chicago and visit all of the education sessions and more importantly, hang out with some of the cool folks who are going to the summit this year. I did also want to highlight that several students from FTC are going as a contingent as student volunteers and also just to go to their first summit. They did receive some funding from student government, which is very exciting, having had several years where that was denied to them. So they put together a good proposal and they have some of their trip covered. But they are also going to be looking for donations for anyone who would like to contribute to cover some of their costs. So I'll share the link to that. I'll give you the link actually to their fundraiser article that includes kind of a little detail on their, I'm saying it directly to Alex, sorry. I'll send it to everyone. Article about the experience they're looking forward to and how they're handling some of the funding. So there is a link there to their GoFundMe page if anyone wanted to contribute. I also see various, oh yeah, just because they're virtual options. No, the summit is face-to-face this year. I know there are some events that will be virtual, including the annual business meeting. I think some credit goes to Karen for advocating that everyone should be able to attend the annual business meeting, regardless of summit attendance for several years running. Karen was like, I'm not letting this one go. And she was right. And now anyone can go to the annual business meeting, which I believe is in April. I'll make sure to send a reminder about that too. So any STC members can go and vote on society level business. And then just a last thing, I know we have some people who are graduating or in transition. We are always looking for volunteers, not just because we are looking for free labor, but because it's a great opportunity to sharpen some of your skills and perhaps build your portfolio or just make some connections with people like us. We think we're pretty cool in a very specifically, bookish kind of way. So if you are looking to have that kind of experience, we'd love to hear from you. I especially wanted to highlight that we are always looking for articles for Memo to members. So Julia is here on the call. If you have something you have written you would like to share on TechCom or something you would like to write, or if you would like to write but you don't know what, Julia is happy to help you put something together. And she even has a page of some suggested prompts for things that you might want to write about. So
I'll put that in the chat. I just need a second to get the link.
Yes. Thank you, Julia. Sorry, I put you on the spot. So
Not a problem.
always looking to have people get a chance to expand their portfolios. So I think that is it for chapter business. And I'm going to hand it over to Jessica Nealon to introduce our speaker tonight.
Hi, I'm Jessica Nealon, and I get the pleasure of introducing Barrie Byron. She is I think it's fair to say STC legend, but it's particularly in Florida. It's true. It's not bragging if it's true. Well, Barrie Byron is an STC associate fellow. Was also the past president of the STC Palm Beaches chapter, which is where I met you, Barrie. I remember that you were very much the driving force behind that chapter. And has a long history of STC membership and volunteer leadership. For those who were not here during our networking event, Barrie knows almost everybody who's just been that was brought up and was nominated. She's been, I would say, a powerhouse in the STC and TechCom community for a very long time. She started when she was 6 months old. So, and the best part, Barrie has now to us, you're a pioneer. And we know that blockchain technology has been around for a while, but just so many of us, it's a brand new frontier. And Barrie now is the senior ecosystem manager for Ignite, which is an industry leader in blockchain technology. I'm going to let you explain more of it because I'm going to bungle it. But I was telling Bethany before you joined. But the best part about it is so much of what you do, Barrie, is related to TechCom, but at a whole other level. You know, I know Barrie has done work in the API SDK space, doing documenting in Git, etc. But taking all of that cutting edge technology and sort of merging it with blockchain, and yet still curating and managing content, technical content, for a variety of audiences. So we're all fascinated to hear the various things that you do. And I'm going to put some links in the chat to the Starport. I know Barrie manages, for instance, the Starport HQ Twitter account, which is another way to communicate with users, etc. So I'm going to post some of that in the chat. And otherwise, I will, Barrie's presentation, I was able to look at it. You go through your history and introduce yourself much better than I could. And how you got where you got it. It's really, you're all in for a treat. So,
well, thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you, everybody. Really, it's so much fun to be here. At first, I thought, oh, more screen time at the end of the day, but actual human interaction is so delightful, and I appreciate so much the invitation to be here. I thought we could just start at the beginning with ABCs, and we're just going to talk about how TechCom opportunities fit in for those of us who are crypto curious. So what we'll talk about in the structure of our ABCs is about me, about my job, about my career path and how we got here, about my company. And then we're going to go on to the next B, and we're going to talk about blockchains and brief histories and basics. And you're going to find that there's a lot that I'm learning every day, and the field is wide and vast, and my scope is specific to where I find myself working. Then we'll spend a good deal of time on crypto careers and the opportunities that we have as TechCom professionals, and how I think we can help to uncomplicate crypto. So that's our agenda for tonight. But first, Jessica talked a little bit about it, and you heard me mention STC competitions. And really, I've been having an excellent, fun career of a lot of variety. I've worked, like many of you, in Brevard County for Harris Corporation. That was my first professional job after I worked at a newspaper. And that's where I found STC. Then when I moved here to Palm Beach County, I was lucky enough to work at Motorola, and that's where I was entered into a competition. And now the house I'm sitting in today is actually across the street from a residential business unit called Renaissance Commons that used to be the old Motorola plant. And so that's why I live in this house. I used to drive by this neighborhood and think, wow, I would like to live there. And I work for a it was a startup size company that ultimately was acquired by many companies, and then ultimately by IBM. And by then I had gone somewhere else and come back into IBM to find myself working with some of my former peers. And DataStax was a great, excellent enterprise job that I enjoyed very much, and was one of the longest running jobs I had. So really, it's been small jobs and big jobs. And what I learned is that it's okay to take risks because there's so much demand out there for tech comm careers. And what I found is software people are my people. I accidentally took jobs at companies where the main focus was a service or a product other than technology. And I found out those were not as good of a fit for me. So really, software people are my people. I love it. I've been working remotely since 2007. And I think that's really great, because when I was at IBM, the hurricane came. They're like, everybody take your stuff home. And that was it. I just never went back to the office. So that was really a bonus. So when the pandemic came, it was not that hard of a transition for me. So first we have to talk about fun. So we're lucky, we're in Florida. If you're interested in blockchain and crypto, Florida is an excellent geography to be in. So these are just some pictures of a few conferences that I have attended as part of my work. I'm not presenting at these conferences, but I work in an organization that says, go learn things, go to these conferences. I'm like, all right, great. So in Miami now, it's a popular crypto city. There's floating billboards with all kinds of crypto and blockchain advertisements out there, floating billboards. So that is just amazing. Picture in the middle of a couple with the baby in the stroller. That baby was a month old and she owned her own Bitcoin already. She owns her own Bitcoin. So by the time she's an adult, her college will be paid for many times. Then there's pictures of me drinking with some of the booths, and blockchain and crypto are different. They bring their dogs to the conferences. They have bars in the middle of everything. You could drink beer all over the place, buckets of beer and dogs and pets and birds and random things. And it's just such a new and interesting space that I find myself in. And there I'm painting on one of the people who was promoting a product. So it's a great space and it's super fun. And going to conferences, like anything, our tech comm conferences, it's fun to do that, but it's also fun to go and just be a sponge and absorb and try to learn things. And even during the pandemic, I got a chance to do that a few times. So where I work, it's called Ignite, but last month it was called Tendermint. So we went through a rebrand recently because Ignite is a new focus to help launch ideas, to help ignite new possibilities, but it's not a new company. It was founded in 2014. In fact, today, our CEO was on a Twitter broadcast. And while I ate my lunch, my husband and I watched him, and it was so interesting. And I had forgotten if I ever knew it, but as he was being interviewed, he said, yeah, I was hired as the first employee in 2014, and he was a designer, and he designed the website, and then now he is our CEO today. And we do have a long history working in this space, and the teams at Ignite, formerly Tendermint, are responsible for building all the key infrastructure, the whole tech stack for something called the Cosmos ecosystem, which we'll talk about more. And our company believes that the mainstream adoption of decentralized services, which is one way to think of blockchain, it's set to advance. It's going places. When I started in February of last year, we had 44 people in 22 countries. And today we have maybe a few more, some are starting that have been hired already, but at least 128 people working from 38 countries. So as people attending this STC Florida meeting, I am here to tell you this is a great time zone. It is a great time zone for global jobs because all of the meetings that take place are usually set for Europe, Eastern time zone. Our team members in California wake up super early, and our team members in Europe always miss their dinner, and team members on the other side of the globe are really losing some sleep. And so we have core hours from 8 a.m. to 12 on UTC -8. So for me, it's, in the middle of the day. So I often don't get to eat lunch, and that's fine. And at least I am working really pretty normal hours. So having people working in those other countries has really been a blessing during this pandemic, and being able to witness how life happens in other parts of the world and how people deal with it. And it has given me so much of a gift to learn from all of the people that I get to work with. And I might be one of the few employees that speaks only one language. So I have great admiration and respect for our multilingual colleagues. They're just so amazing. So before I go any farther, one of the acronyms that really we all need to learn in everything we do, but especially in crypto and blockchain, is DYOR, do your own research. So what I say here today is just my opinions. It's not financial advice. Everything we talk about is viewed through the lens of what I do in my job and what I know, which is limited. Just like we all have a very specialized facet of our work and our skills, but DYOR. So WC, I'm looking at you. So I'm not an encyclopedia of blockchain, but I can share what I know. And thank you so much for all of your questions that came in advance. And I'll do my best to answer them. And if I don't know, I'll just say that I don't know. But this is really important to think about as we go forward. The DYOR, we are doing that. Oh, here, let me maximize the screen again. And first, I want to start with a story. So I'm now in the house that I bought in 2015. My realtor lives right across the street from me. So she caught me in the street a couple weeks ago. She's like, oh, I heard about this crypto and you work for crypto. So tell me, should I get into crypto? And I get that a lot from my friends and family. They're like, you work in blockchain, you must know everything. What should I buy? What should I invest in? And I told her, I'm like, oh, I hear you work in real estate. So what do you think? Is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? And she's like, well, it depends. Do you want a single family home? Are you reselling? Are you a first time buyer? There's so much to know. And I'm like, exactly. So when you think about everything that we know for all of our jobs, it all comes down to the context that we bring to the situation. So I'm grateful to my neighbor in real estate professional, and she's our friend also. And that's a picture of my house right there on the right. I took that last night after we installed some lights on our patio. And she helped me because she was a professional in real estate. And I can help people with communication, but I am not a professional in cryptocurrency. I can, however, talk about the basics. So the blockchain basics, there's not any. It's complicated. So first of all, what does it mean when we talk about a blockchain? So a blockchain is it's a ledger. It's a public ledger, as if you were making entries in a ledger. But what makes blockchain different than a traditional database? It's communally managed. So there's different ways to manage how transactions are written to this public ledger. And how that happens is with digitally distributed transaction authority. So when we talk about digitally distributed, we talk about decentralized and permissionless. All of that is new and different, and it's a hard concept to grasp. And I have to say, I relearn it every day, but it's also immutable. So what that means is once something is written to a blockchain, it's a transaction, and that transaction is there forever. So it's very transparent. And although cryptocurrency does have some type of a urban legend regarding, oh, it's easy to be fraud, you can have a fraud attack or someone could take your money, but still everything on networks, which are another word for blockchains, is immutable. And it's all there, it's public. So the reason they call cryptocurrency is because the blockchains are written with cryptography. So the cryptography is responsible for writing every transaction to the database, which is called a ledger. So what it means to be distributed, it exists across a network. So it's confusing because you think about a blockchain network, it could be a project, it could be a single chain, but it also could be an interconnected network chain. So just like all of the technologies that we all write about in our daily jobs, there's a really good opportunity for TechCom professionals to uncomplicate the crypto. But the vocabulary has been established, and now we know that blockchain is a ledger with every transaction that is transparent and visible to all. You might not know exactly who an account belongs to, but you can see the account address and you can see all of the transactions. And blockchain is not just for cryptocurrency. We think it is because Bitcoin was the first. And Bitcoin is known for the cryptocurrency, but it's also the name of their network. So the Bitcoin blockchain. But what blockchains are great for is it facilitates the process of recording transactions and also tracking digital assets. When I first started learning about blockchain, I'm like, oh, I better watch some things. And I found something on television, and it was about tracking the path of wild caught salmon and how you could track it all the way to the shelf in the fish store. And so I'm like, wow, tracking physical assets as well. So there's a place for it in a lot of different domains, but there's not really anything basic about blockchain, but it's complicated. So I'll do my best to answer the questions that I'm sure we will have. So we all need to know the history and how it starts. A lot of people think that blockchain started when Bitcoin was started, but actually the research began during the recession. So starting in 1979, all the way through 2007, there were no practical applications being used, but there was a lot of research, and we've heard about the Merkle trees and different types of technology. But what happened that is always remembered is Satoshi Nakamoto published the Bitcoin white paper. So the Bitcoin idea was created the year before in 2008, but it wasn't until 2009 that the Bitcoin blockchain was launched. And it was in the early days of January in 2009 when the first block, which is called the Genesis block of the first blockchain, was mined. And we will talk about mining. And then it wasn't until 2012 that an altcoin, which just means coins other than Bitcoin, and something called proof of stake was developed because there needs to be different ways of doing things. Ethereum was launched after 2012, and Ethereum is the second most well-known cryptocurrency. And it also proved that blockchains were useful for things other than cryptocurrency. So for transactions that had nothing to do with finances, it was just data records. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Then in 2014, when Tendermint was founded, which of course now is rebranded as Ignite, and that's a proof of stake kind of transaction process of how things are written to the blockchain in 2004. So think about that. So that is 2014. That's only 8 years ago. So there's been so much today, and there's so much growth happening that's changing. And as we go through a couple of the resources that I prepared, I'll tell you how much it's grown just in the few days since I started this presentation until we got here. So we have to talk about network security and financial security. Those are the largest benefits that the blockchain technology can give us. So the best thing about it is there's always a structure, and it's called deterministic. So you always get the same result no matter how many times you do it. So it produces a structure of data with inherent security qualities. So the security is really very fabulous and great. And it uses the principles of cryptography decentralization, and something called consensus to ensure trust. Remember before we talked about a communal maintenance of databases. So are your eyes glazed yet? This is where my mom's like, please don't put them to sleep. But when you think about it, you can transfer data and funds in a fully secure manner. And that's what the largest benefit of blockchain is. And this transparency and immutability, they're appealing to business sectors all over the world. So I did some specific research to be the most current, and the crypto market today is valued at 1.75 trillion. And I think it was only 2 years ago, it was in the billions. And it did get up to somewhere around 200 trillion, although I didn't get verification today, but that's about the size of Google. So it turns out 18% of the population in the United States owns some crypto. So you have to think about the different touch points. And again, it's not a direct relationship between crypto and blockchain, but it all kind of goes together, especially the way we think about it. Now, this is what I know how to talk about very well. So the Cosmos ecosystem. So the Cosmos ecosystem is the internet of blockchains, and it's also a network of all of the blockchains that are built using the Cosmos SDK framework, which is just a modular set of different types of modules that are built together so that blockchains, you don't have to reinvent it every time you build one. You need to have dependency on bank, on authorization, on distribution, on whatever types of modules you need. You can make your own, or you can use the ones that come with it. But the Cosmos ecosystem, it's really cool to be in this space. It's the world's largest cross-chain network. And the first blockchain ever, remember we talked about Bitcoin being the first one? Well, then the Cosmos ecosystem, the first blockchain was the Cosmos Hub. So when I started, it was in February, and they were just concluding a big project. And they said, okay, everybody who's worked here before today, everybody's eligible for a crypto bonus. So send me your Atom address. I'm like, well, what is that? What's a Cosmos Atom address? So it turns out the Cosmos Hub is the creator of the Cosmos Atom token, which is a coin. And the coin is like a Bitcoin. A Bitcoin is a BTC. Ethereum coin is an ETH. Well, in the Cosmos ecosystem, the coin for the very first blockchain is called the Atom, like the invention of the world and like the t-shirt that I'm wearing tonight. So when I think about the Cosmos Hub as being the first one, and now there's 263, and I think there's going to be, we think one day there will be more than 1 million. And what makes the Cosmos ecosystem different is because each blockchain is a sovereign application specific blockchain. So you could have one that's just for STC, let's say. And then you could have one just for home exchange. We talked about that earlier. Or you could have one just for NFTs, which is another popular term. But application specific, which means each chain is more likely to scale and to be able to grow. So we can talk about some more challenges with the traditional blockchains like Bitcoin and Ethereum. But it's pretty cool to have over 283 apps and services in the Cosmos ecosystem. And I am providing these slides and I'll show you how to access them at the end. So every time you see a highlight, don't worry, if you're really excited about it, you can go through and you can do your follow-up research. Remember, that's what you want to do. And I see Lori's getting ready to join. So when you want to think about how you could visualize blockchains, it's like people are like, what do you mean? How do you do it? How can you visualize it? There's a block explorer. So I prepared this to show you all. So this is a block explorer. I didn't do it. I prepared the screen. But these are 43 of those 263 blockchains are here on this map of zones which means they're able to talk to each other. So when I started working in blockchain, a blockchain couldn't talk to another blockchain. It was like Jessica's example of not being able to transfer the data with the ERDL port. Well, now these blockchains can talk to each other using it's a protocol called the Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol. When I started preparing this, there was 39, then there was 42, and now today there's 43. And the blockchain projects that are getting ready to launch, if you have the show testnet on the right, we have 179 projects right now who are working on this. It's pretty amazing. So if you look at any one of these, this osmosis, that's a DEX. It's a decentralized exchange. And this is a popular one. And look at the total transactions in the last 24 hours are 379,000. That's pretty amazing. MetaBlock, this is a product that is built with the product that I write about, which is called Starport. They've done 3,000 in the last 24 hours. Just looking here at random, the keychain Stargaze. So we have some people that I work with that have started validating for this blockchain, and we can talk more about validation. And you can see this is a newer one, and they have 38,000. And look, they say IBC out failed 1,500, and it's okay. So in blockchain, it's all right not to have everything perfect. People expect it, and they expect it. I mean, you learn, and you have to know which projects to trust. And here's the Juno chain. So just to give you a little idea that there's actually things here. So there's something like this is a visual block explorer. This is a traditional block explorer. So you can have a dashboard by each one of those chains. So I picked Juno. I happen to own some Juno. And you could look at the block explorer. You can see the number of transactions. Sometimes when you talk about writing things to a database at the time you do it, blockchain doesn't use a timestamp. It uses a block height, and that's a frozen moment in time. And it's very interesting when you look at all of these things and you look at all of these. This is my receive address. It's safe to share it. It's a 40 character address. If you have a mobile device, you could do it. And you could see that transactions that you've done, and this, so it's a lot to go through. But if we want to come back to this, I did prepare some transactions that we can look at. And to be able to look at this map of zones, it's pretty cool. You can look at 24 hours, you can look at 7 days, you can look over 30 days. I mean, you can see there's so much going on. You can see the most active ones. So this is what they mean by transparency. You can see everything that's happening. Anybody can see it, and you can sort it by the total transactions. There's a lot of different things that you could do, and you can check on who's doing mainly receives and mainly sends by the color, and each one of these little lights indicates there's some kind of transaction going on. But this is my favorite. It's a beta, and they didn't have a good README. So I did submit a pull request to this project saying, hey, you guys, let's make some docs. But I don't see anybody really getting on top of that pull request. But I thought, well, maybe we could help them. But this is pretty cool. So whenever I need a reminder that the blockchain activities happen, and we can think about the map of zones. So in the Cosmos Hub, they call the blockchain a zone. So once again, we get an opportunity for terminology clarity. And there's just a fixed picture of it, but I wanted us to be able to drill down into that if you want. And you can read about some of these products in the news. I know Akash was in the news recently, Osmosis, Cosmos. This is the Cosmos Hub we talked about. Juno's the one we just looked at. Comdex, I met those people at the conference. It's pretty interesting to see all of the things. One of the questions that was submitted is, now what about all of the mining? So WC, I know you had talked about the Bitcoin mining and how that works. There seems to be a big energy debate. and there is a large difference of opinion on how the transactions happen in the blockchain world and how people think about them. So the first blockchain was Bitcoin. The second most well-known blockchain is Ethereum. And both of those blockchains write transactions to their network using something called proof of work. And proof of work is when people running computers trying to solve mathematical equations to get to a hash that's 40 characters long that matches the target that's been set up on that chain. And they compete for that, and they get rewards if they solve the hash and they're able to write that transaction. So the good news is it's super secure. I mean, really, no doubt it's the most secure consensus mechanism in place. And the bad news is it takes a while. So it could be every 10 minutes that you could write a block to the blockchain. But there's also Bitcoin is one blockchain, Ethereum is one blockchain. So if you have a lot of people waiting to do their transactions using that database, that public ledger, there's a lot of problems with throughput. And you could read all kinds of news about the challenges that Ethereum had last year, where they had already 96% throughput. And then the transaction fees, it's like driving our car now, where you pay a lot of money and you have gas fees. Transaction fees could be called gas. So in the proof of work network, the gas fees were so high. I remember somebody at work saying, wow, I did a transaction yesterday and my fee was $45. So, and it was just a small transaction. So in addition to the high gas fees, throughput and scalability, there's also an idea that there's environmental issues. So you heard of mining farms and people have all these computers running and it creates a lot of energy and it's hot, but it turns out that they're actually, it's not as bad, I think, as some people think, because it's an incentive to have more energy sustainable practices. And a lot of the energy that is used by Bitcoin miners is renewable energy. There's a whole field of thought on that, but we did want to talk about the energy debate and the crypto economics related to that. So what's so cool about Cosmos, where I work, is it solved the energy problem. So it uses, I think, 1/1000th of the energy that for each transaction for a proof of stake than it does in a proof of work. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And how did they do that? They did that because they had a different consensus mechanism. And the company, Tendermint was the former name that hired me, is also the name of the protocol that was written for the blockchain consensus mechanism. So if any of your eyes are starting to glaze, I get it, I get it. So when you think about all of this, they have the idea of something called the Byzantine fault tolerance consensus engine and the proof of stake. So all that means is a majority of the people making sure the transactions are accurate and verified have to be up, and then it's secure. So that's great. There's a bunch of people communally taking care of the database without a centralized authority. Like, wow, that's pretty awesome. So in May of last year, Elon Musk made some kind of a remark, and I don't know if you remember, but the market went crazy. And one of the founders of the Tendermint Core consensus mechanism has a famous tweet pictured here that says, hey, Cosmos pioneered the energy efficient proof of stake, or the Tesla of blockchains. And you'll see that mentioned in a lot of different news. So we talked briefly about the scalability and interoperability. So we'll just go back to the picture here of the map of zones and all of these things. You're seeing it, and they're all interoperating. They're all talking. This didn't happen when I started working in blockchain, so it's pretty cool that it happened right after I started. And we talked about scalability, which is just being able to build one application-specific blockchain to do whatever it is you want to do. So it gives people more creative freedom, and it allows better solutions. And there's a very altruistic part of blockchain, which is very appealing to me as well, where a lot of projects are for the public good. So blockchains in the Cosmos ecosystem, they can scale so easily to millions of users through all different kinds of solutions. And that's what Ignite is all about, is developing these solutions to make it easier to build blockchains in the Cosmos ecosystem. Then we talked briefly about the inter-blockchain communication protocol, and it's pretty cool. So the product that I write is called Starport. It's a command line interface product. And in the past, I used to think, oh, command line product, that's not cool, but it's cool. It's really cool. Yeah, with one command, you install it in another command. You're building your own blockchain with all those framework modules that we talked about in the Cosmos SDK. So you can see just talking about it can really be challenging to anybody, especially for me who works in it every day, trying to explain it to all of you who have done your own work all day long in your own technology domains. But it's pretty cool that I get to be in a space that I'm really proud of. And I think it solves a big problem of execution. So the reason that the modern blockchains are choosing proof of stake is because execution happens with lower transaction fees and faster. So the other cool thing is when you think about all of this, it's like anything is possible, you know, anything is. So that's all pretty neat. So now we're going to talk about communication. Did you guys want to go on forward, and I'll talk about where we fit in, and then we'll come back to the technology. Does that sound good? Okay, so there's a lot to talk about when it comes to blockchain and where we fit as tech com professionals. I think it's pretty neat to be working in a space that has high business value for content. I'm sure all of you have been in different jobs throughout your careers where perhaps documentation wasn't thought of first. You know, everybody knew how it worked, and maybe you didn't get to update everything before the release. Well, that doesn't happen in blockchain because nobody knows how anything works. So with teams across the world that are in all the different time zones, written communication has really had a lot of really, you know, high status, high value. So it turns out that asynchronous communication, it relies on well-written long-form communication. So although we do use Slack, we have Slack protocols and we have Slack guidelines, and you want to be able to manage your Slack, but also all the features are well documented. All of the design is well documented, and people who use all of these tools and products, they rely on technically accurate content. It's pretty amazing that I moved from a space where they didn't even let people see the documentation before they bought the product. And then I was never updating the docs in time for the new features. I'd be always surprised when something was changed. And now I'm in a space where everybody writes the docs. In the Cosmos SDK, if you look at their contributing guidelines, you cannot merge a code base update without the relevant and related documentation. It's a requirement. That's called Docs as code. We've all heard of that. And if there's some gaps in the documentation, community members jump in and fill things. I had somebody submit something, say, oh, you know, there's some commas misplaced here. I'd love to fix your commas. I'm like, hey, fix the commas. I mean, people care a lot about the docs. There's people who write docs that are in a lot of different roles. And that was new for me. I didn't know that. The first weekend that I was at work, we were launching a new website, the Cosmos.network version 2 website. And I was helping edit this document, and I could see the CEO in the document actually making changes. I just was like, wow, this is so great. So the best thing is everybody reads the docs. And for most projects, open source is the norm. That was new for me too. I had been working at a job that was an enterprise version of an open source project, but it wasn't the true open source. And we had to go back and forth between the free version and the enterprise version. So I had experience with open source, but not living my life in a space where anybody could jump in and help. So that's kind of eye-opening for me too. So now that we've established that the content has high business values, I think our mission is to uncomplicate crypto. There's a lot that needs to happen with the technology itself. There's a lot of barriers to entry. There's a lot of friction as a blockchain developer, as a token investor. You want to buy crypto, maybe the way that Nancy did here. Maybe you have to figure out how to use one of the exchanges. There's a lot of friction that will be improved over time. It's a new technology, so it's not there yet. But a lot of ways that our careers in blockchain are going to be opening up the possibilities for technical communication professionals is in different types of job titles. So the title of my job I applied for was senior technical writer. I'm like, oh, I know what that is. But now I'm a senior ecosystem development manager. And it's like, oh, I didn't know what that was. But also taxonomist. We need to be able to have a vocabulary that we all know what we're talking about. Editors have huge status. I serve mostly as an editor these days because everybody's writing docs. Strategy, content strategy, blog writers and copywriters in huge demand. There's so much knowledge that's shared informally outside the bounds of regular documentation sets that we think of from enterprise companies. Also, roles for us include things like the social comms, like the Twitter, the LinkedIn, the whatever kind of social channels you're on. We have a tool that is called Discord that we manage and moderate. Communication managers, external and internal communication, marketing, PR, designer, UI, UX, all of that really in TechCom. There's so much space for those of us who are language proficient and good at taking complicated ideas and talking about them in a way that works for our audience. So I want to tell you about how I got my job. I just am amazed. So I had a misalignment with my values when I had a small startup that was based in San Francisco. I thought, great, San Francisco, it's really good. And it was 3 months into my job and I realized, this isn't what I thought it would be. And I'm like, oh no, I got a sign-on bonus. I really want to stay. There's a 1-year cliff for some equity. It was really a great experience and some really great people. 99% of us now work different places. So I have friends in different places now, which is good. So early in my 1 year that I made a commitment to stay there, is I went on a search and I knew what I didn't want, but I didn't know what I did want. So it was the first time I had really done an intentional search based on the core values of the people and the idea of the technology. I didn't know there was such a thing. It really was projects for social good, trying to make the world a better place. It's like, yes, helping underrepresented people in tech elevate themselves. It's like, I didn't know that jobs like this happened. So my job at DataStax, which was an enterprise distributed database, was excellent background. And also my financial technology startup job was another excellent foundation to understand that I don't really understand anything when it comes to financial technology, except for as a banking consumer. I did not have all of the heavy foundation of economics that many of my colleagues do. But I got to do my research, and at the end, I had 3 job offers, and I got a chance to choose the company that was really aligned well with me. And they said, great. So what I want you to do is go to this Cosmos SDK, and here's an idea for a new module. So could you write, some module documentation for something that we're thinking about doing, and there's no docs for it yet. I'm like, yeah, sure, I could do that. They said, this is a paid assignment. So it required GitHub, it required using Markdown, it required doing all of my research, and it took me more than 40 hours. Now that was a paid assignment. It was a light payment of $150, but I almost gave up. And I thought, this is so hard and so complicated. But then I thought, let me just try it some more. And finally, I tried it. And I'm so glad that I did. And it was just amazing that I was able to find a company with great values, and I was able to be a sponge. So I didn't show up with any blockchain experience. A lot of the jobs I looked at, for any of you who would be interested, also require nice to have. But a lot of us don't have this experience now. So I just applied online, and I thought, oh, I didn't even know what this job was. The funny thing is, it was called Tendermint, the company, but you heard me mention earlier, Tendermint, the protocol. So before my first interview, I read all the Tendermint docs. It was the wrong Tendermint. And so it was the consensus protocol. It wasn't the company, which was Starport, my product. Another reason that we did a rebrand, so that we could all have some alignment and making sure we know that we are a company called Ignite. So the interesting thing for me is where I fit. So I didn't understand really what it meant to report into the growth team. And what growth means in the blockchain space is grow the number of blockchains, help more projects, help more people develop their own blockchains, help more people realize their dreams. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. So I was the only technical writer. I still am. We are hiring a developer documentation writer, and I came up with that title, but it's really a developer to write specific tutorials in a language. But they want so many people to write content. So the people that I work with are marketing, public relations, communications managers, and community managers. When we think of the word community, it's that when we think of support for enterprise products, like let's say, like last week, I noticed there were some fraudulent charges on my Wells Fargo credit card. And I'm like, wait a minute, this wasn't it. So, I got some support, and I actually had to call a phone number and talk to a person, and they resolved it. So the only mechanism for me to get support was to go directly to the centralized authority. But the way it works in the community is everybody helps each other. I'm like, oh, is that what that is? So all these years of my career, I never really understood that managing communities means to give space to everybody to help each other. So we don't have to solve all the problems because people are solving them already. People are interested, they're doing things. Developer relations engineers, that's my two peers I have now. Business development, that turns out to be a really exciting part. And now we have two people in business development to help identify projects that want to build blockchains. And so my particular department within growth is called the ecosystem development. And so our mission statement is we are not a mission statement, but a description. We are an interdisciplinary team that sits in a border space between product, which in our case, it's developer experience, because they want everyone to try to lower the friction and help people build blockchains. Engineering, we know engineering, a lot of us work with engineers. Developer experience too. Like I mentioned, the product and the developer experience to try to identify the right way, and marketing. So it's like, wow, this is so great. So after a lifetime of being on engineering teams, I find myself in a new space with new people with different mindsets, and it's a lot of fun. So I didn't expect it, and I wasn't sure how I would like it, but I'm really enjoying it. So we talked briefly about this already, but these are the things that I get to do in my job. So of course I write docs, mostly I edit. So and I'll edit anything. So I made a slide deck last week for somebody who presented at Middlesex University, and it was our vice president of engineering. He said, I don't have time to do it. I'm like, I'll do it for you. And it's fun to see the challenges that people face addressing this content for a specific audience. I partner with many people on their content because they know it needs to be done, but I'll help them with structures and templates and guidelines and different kinds of things. I manage our Twitter for our product, which is called Starport. You can follow Starport HQ. I'm also a community member of developers, and I mentioned Discord. So that's where we interact with our developers, and there's a certain number of channels, and I made a docs channel. People could ask questions in there. I also manage the website for starport.com, and there's a page for the CLI specifically that was new. So we rolled that out last month, or maybe it was January. And that was very interesting. The first time I ever did a website project management, and took a lot longer than I thought. I'm a code-based maintainer, so I can approve PRs, and everything that's a markdown file automatically gets tagged to me for review. I get to do hackathon moderations. That was super fun. So the Cosmos ecosystem, I showed you the map of zones, which is a subset of Cosmos. But just to tell you how exciting these hackathons are. So Cosmos, remember, it was invented with the Cosmos Hub in 2014. But finally, in 2019, they had, it was 2000, yeah, they've been having these hackathons. And so hackathons are just another name for, let's get people to achieve these challenges that we think would be important and make the ecosystem stronger. And in return, we'll give them rewards in the form of the tokens from the product that it works on. So when I first started, they were just concluding payment of those rewards for a competition that had 2 sponsors for $50,000. So I started in February. They're like, okay, we got to start working on this hackathon, and it's going to happen, and we're going to have it for the whole month of November. And I'm like, okay, this is great. Or maybe it was October, we judged it in November, I forget, but it takes place for a 30-day period. We had 23 sponsors for $1.2 million. So every challenge had to be written and edited. All the rules had to be written and edited. So of course I wrote rules in there saying you need to have a description of the product, and you need to have a README of your product, and you need to have whatever these things are. And then later I realized, oh, I have to read all of these. So our ecosystem team ran the whole competition. There was 4 of us. So it was pretty incredible. And it was a lot of fun to see. And, you know, not all the challenges were able to be achieved, because if they were easy, they would have been done already. But they paid out almost $1 million in rewards and the tokens for those projects. So that was pretty cool. So even to know about the idea of running these hackathons, it was pretty amazing to see. And in fact, one of these projects that you see here on Map of Zones, you see this osmosis. This was a hackathon winner, and now look at them, they're doing great. So a lot of people quit their jobs and become, you know, run their own crypto projects. Right now, we're inventing some new products I can't talk about, but I partner with our designer, and I review all the language, and then we decide on vocabulary. And I got to win and encouraged suggestion for sentence case for the UI, so that we had consistency for the capitalization. I get to review all the UIs. Anything somebody wants me to do, I'll do it. It's nice to be invited, and it's nice to have an opportunity to make a meaningful contribution. So I thought about, what am I doing and how am I being measured with my deliverables? I'm like, wow, you know, just in the last few weeks, I've gotten a wide variety of things that keeps my job interesting. So of course, docs. Docs actually turn out to be the easiest part of the job. Tutorials turn out to be the hardest, because they include the code and the challenge for that specific end-to-end technical learning enablement. READMEs, that's something that when you go to GitHub and you look at a project, a README is the most important thing, so a person can see that before they go on. When they asked me if I wanted to run the Twitter, I'm like, yes, of course, I want to do it. I've done that for my STC chapter before. I thought, wow, I had no idea it could take half an hour to write a good tweet, and it's not that long. This week, I got to make editing checklists for blogs. I realized there was a couple of opportunities that kept coming up again for the different authors. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to make an editing checklist and have them go through the checklist before I get it. We're developing taxonomy now. So I have word lists that we can all agree that Web3 is a capital W and a space before 3, although only Coinbase does that. And then New York Times doesn't have a space. So, I mean, it's evolving, the vocabulary. I'm in charge of our learning resources for everybody who joins. So everybody's like, okay, cool, I'm here now, what do I do? So I just maintain and curate all the learning resources, the hackathon and other challenges that we're doing, even something as simple as a pull request template in GitHub. Somebody submits a pull request, you can provide some background and requirements for what they do. And even something like contributing guidelines in the code base. So we recently went to a milestone agile kind of a methodology for our software development. So the PRs and the contributing guidelines need to be updated. They're like, Barrie can do that. I can edit code strings. I can create code owner files, whatever teams need. It's okay if you don't know, you could just try to do it. And it's a safe space, I think, in blockchain in particular. But it's really a fun job. I'm having more fun at this job than I've had in my whole life. So what does that mean for you guys? So I searched today, technical writer blockchain jobs, and it was something like 193, but I'm like, look at this one. I had also searched back on March 18th when I was preparing this. I'm like, look at that, 246 without any refinement of my job search. So it turns out right now, just on one job aggregator site, there's 50 of the jobs posted on Indeed, and 10 of the jobs are in Florida. So they're in Miami. Miami's a big crypto site. And even just using Google for a job search is pretty amazing. There's also crypto specific job aggregators, but as with all things, DOYR, be careful about submitting any personal information to any job site, because not everybody has the same integrity that we would like to think about. So just use a lot of caution how you do it. And I just threw some qualifications up here for different jobs that I looked at today. And it turns out you have to just have significant interest in blockchain. You just have to be a positive. You have to be cheerful. I mean, these are actually personality traits that are, you know, easy to measure in yourself if that's something you might find interesting. So now that you know jobs are out there, if you did want it, how would you do it? So the easiest way might be to think about it from the open source side. My colleague Sonia wrote a nice blog article, how can you contribute to the Cosmos ecosystem? Probably the best thing to do is just find something you're interested in and join that project. All the communities are on different types of socials. Twitter plays a big role in blockchain communications and announcements. Discord is a server-based, project-specific, channel-based, moderated chat. Telegram is an encrypted messaging app. We don't use it for our channel now because we're stretched pretty thin. But when we're all away from the office and we go to a conference, we use Telegram instead of Slack, so we don't get sucked into our work. You know, it gives us another place we could do it. When I meet someone at a conference, they're like, hey, are you on Telegram? So that's how you hook up. It's not LinkedIn. GitHub, all the projects have a code base somewhere. Most of them are on GitHub. Reddit, a lot of things happen. I would recommend you build a GitHub profile. Here's my README in my GitHub profile. And I'll show you how all of the resources we talk about here tonight are on GitHub. Just start with docs, edit docs, agree when Jessica asks you, hey, can you present? Nancy will say, yes, actually, I'll show you how I bought my first crypto. And that would be one way to do it. If you want to write a blog about, wow, the day I learned about blockchain, something as simple as that really is giving you a way to have a presence that could be discoverable. Go to the talks and conferences, look at those floating billboards, rinse and repeat. It's all pretty amazing. How do you find a project? I'm noticing here, these projects, you'll see the better in the distributed thing. These are the projects that I know about, and I know people that work on them, and I just search for the name Starport on GitHub and you find it. But here I've linked all the repositories. One thing you might find interesting is if there's an open job that you might have an interest of, go to that project on GitHub, find them in the news, listen to their podcasts, read the news, watch the news, ask your friends and neighbors, watch the YouTube videos. There's just all kinds of amazing ways that you could do that. Now, of course, my recruiters at work said, please tell everybody that we're hiring. We have a goal to reach 165 people by the end of the year, and we're on track to do that. And it turns out that having the people that you work with is really important. So having a good fit of intention and work style is a really big driving factor in our hiring practices, because you want somebody who believes the same thing the company believes, not for, culture and views, but, to make sure that you support the technology goals. And so our goal is to accelerate the transition to decentralized future. We want to empower individuals, organizations, and global communities to engage with blockchain technology, unlock its infinite value. This is our real mission statement, and we want to create a more transparent and equitable world. So this is our job that we have open right now on my team. We've been interviewing for 2 months. I've been interviewing for 2 months, giving take-home assignments, and it's hard to fill job. It's somebody who's a Go developer who can write technical enablement tutorials, start to finish building blockchains. So it's pretty hard slot to fill. We have some promising candidates. Everything I talked about here is on my link tree. If you haven't thought about a link tree, it's a pretty easy free product that just is easy to share. And mine, I did blockchain for technical communicators. And I'll just show you what it looks like when you go to the GitHub. One of my colleagues said, you can't give them those slide decks, put it on your GitHub. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. She said, give them a list of all the links. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. So I did that for you. So everything we talked about is here. The news that I thought is interesting for the last month or two, I've been gathering. You might find that interesting. Here's some things I think you might enjoy subscribing to some of those. One of you asked a question about what kind of users are we writing for? My product, I write for blockchain developers, but we have different archetypes: beginner, savvy, expert. One of our colleagues wrote an amazing, beautiful article last year about Starport. I still think it's the best out there. We have another product that we hope will have custodial wallet availability for all the users, which means you can hold your own token. And this is another person I get lucky enough to work with. And that one and some of your other questions you answered. I did a little light research on it. And if I didn't know, I have a little monkey here. One of you talked about inflation. Is there ever any more? Well, Bitcoin, there's only going to be 21 million ever in the world. We're at 18.8 million right now. So it's getting harder and harder to solve those algorithmic hash challenges. But when it gets to 21 million, the scarcity is going to be good. So the idea from Bitcoin maximalists is if everyone owns 3 Bitcoins, you'll be a millionaire. That's what they said at the conference. Do your own research. And what are the communication needs? We talked about a lot of that. Job titles you could do. Here's the search on Indeed. I was really surprised. Oh, since this afternoon, there's 2 more jobs posted. So that is the end of a lot of talk about blockchain. So I don't know, you guys, how you might like that, but it was a lot to cover. So
Barrie,
I
just was going to give you a break because I was going to, but go ahead.
I'm sorry I went past 8 o'clock. I thought, oh no, I'll never be able to
No.
fill that space. But when it comes down to it, everything each one of us does all day at work is really we're experts in our own domain. And so I'm not an expert in this domain, but I happen to be super friendly. And that turns out to be very useful in a space where nobody really knows what we're doing. Well, we know, but it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, I was fascinated by how much you explained. I never knew the crypto part of cryptocurrency. And also we had the conversation at the beginning about how old technology comes back around again. Isn't
Yeah.
it fascinating how people who are indexers and editors would do very well in the crypto space because of the curation and how
Yeah,
you're doing so much
exactly.
editing? And I thought that was always the debate. Even when 20 years ago when I joined, it was like, well, no one indexes anymore, and there's no editors anymore. But here
Well,
you are, those
actually,
are the
yeah,
primary
I
skills.
I love indexers myself. Of course, now a lot of it's done automatically. So not to create a printed index, but the search indexing.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
so you guys, what's the biggest TechCom question that you have after hearing all of the blockchain
I have a
chatter?
question.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I don't know if you mentioned this, but I mean, a blockchain is presumably a chain of blocks. So could you tell me a little bit more about what a block is? I assume it's like the smallest unit of a blockchain.
A block is a certain block height, and it gets written to the public ledger, and the block height is set by, I think, the owner of the project. And then, like in Bitcoin, I know they try to write a block every 10 minutes, and if your transaction comes after that, you have to wait for the next one for 10 minutes. So it's a piece of a database, just like a database record, really.
Okay.
When you think about a database record, except for a database record, remember, you can create, read, update, and delete. With a blockchain, once you write it, it's there forever.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot. I tried to come up with a way. I heard my CEO say it. One of the things I added on the GitHub is I put a nice Twitter broadcast that I watched today at lunch, and he explained it so well. I'm like, I should record this. But the technology still is a little bit sticky, right? So it has a lot of barriers to entry. We want to make it easier.
Sure. Okay.
But it's just a database. It's a public ledger because we can all see it, even though the transactions could be private. You don't know who the transactions are or how much they are, but you can see the block height that a transaction happened at.
Right.
So one of the questions that I had that I shared with Jessica earlier this year, why is it that crypto and everything has made the amount to get a graphics card so high, and the graphics card are not available out there? Like if your graphics card on your computer, goes kaput, then you can't do anything about it.
I'm not sure exactly if that's related to crypto and blockchain, but I do know that the people who are using proof of work consensus, like BitChain and Ethereum, do rely on a lot of computational power, which means a lot of computers, which means that perhaps the supply becomes more limited because miners are out there trying to win the mathematical challenge to earn the rewards when they are able to solve it and then get the rewards for that block writing to the blockchain. It could possibly be a case of supply and demand.
Okay.
I say do your own research, but I think that's what it might be.
Okay, Barry, I've got to ask. I appreciate particularly the great enthusiasm with which you presented this to us, but the vocabulary still seems to be so remote. I have a basic, difficulty with who's the audience for most of all this stuff when the language is. And the reason I became curious about it is, like, I've got Intel stock, and Intel has just developed a chip for this, but the press release, the information was absolutely unintelligible. If you can tell me what this means, I'll have a better understanding about whether I even belong in that space. It says, Hive blockchain agreed to buy Intel's new mining chips in a deal that crypto miners said could increase its aggregate Bitcoin mining hash rate by as much as 95% from 1.9 exahash per second EH/s. What do those words mean?
Alex just said that. Remember, he was saying there was no chips available.
Yeah,
it just means that people who are
like,
using.
Is it like a global video game where everybody's,
no,
doing something?
It's people who are devoted to being Bitcoin miners that have, remember, it's a communally supported database, remember, so it's not just one entity, but miners have these computers that are solving those algorithmic caches. And if your computer has a new chip and it solves it faster, you have a better chance of getting the mathematical answer to earn that reward, possibly.
So are these like Easter eggs distributed around the internet that people have to find, or they're like, what am I mining? Yeah, I hear algorithms.
Oh, I don't know. I work in the proof of stake ecosystem. I'm not a Bitcoin person. I went to a Bitcoin conference and I came home and told my husband, we're buying $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. And I don't know how much Bitcoin I have right now, but I just made an account on something called Coinbase, which is just an entry level exchange. Any one of us could do it. And, you know, I then moved it off of that onto a wallet. It's a terrible name. That's just this name that was invented by somebody and it's stuck. It shouldn't be called a wallet, but it is. But yeah, I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. I don't understand a lot about it. I just know we're not it.
I mean, it seems like the 246 jobs have a very high bar to entry because of the esoteric vocabulary, the unusual lack of structure about, I mean, this is clearly not for everybody.
Oh, you know what? It's so fun. I know we're out of time, you guys, but I just am going to show you. I did a little research. So are you guys looking at my screen over here? So here is my, oh, let's move this away. So here's on Google, I just typed in technical writer, blockchain jobs, remote. And I'm look at this one. This one says, it talks about what it is. It says, don't worry if you don't meet it. But if you know how to work in open source, that's good. If you're interested in it, that's good. I'm like, oh, isn't that cool? And look at this one. Contractors love CoinMe. I mean, there's actually things in here that talk about being positive, enthusiastic. One word that shows up, WC, is the one you're experiencing now, ambiguity. A lot of the jobs say comfortable with ambiguity. And it doesn't say you have to be Bitcoin. I mean, I went out here and I'm like, look at this. There's a lot of very interesting things. Growth mindset. So it turns out a lot of it is attitude. But I thought, oh, isn't that neat? So what is Glua? And Jessica, you were laughing at with Lakuchi.
Yeah.
The words in the blockchain space are so diverse and amazing. We don't think anything about Bored Apes. I mean, there's all kinds of, look at this, proven work experience. That's it. Diagramming, that's it. You know, proficiency. It's like there is a lot of jobs out there that are very interesting. It just talks about, look, you could just have 2 to 4 years experience. And it's nice to have crypto. Yeah, you don't have to have it. But so, yeah, I thought the same thing, W3. I thought, what is all this vocabulary and what does it mean? But I thought, what if I were searching? What would I look for? But I remember thinking, look at that. That company has some core values that look pretty cool. They actually had the word kindness on the website. I'm like, I have to work there.
WC, I think I kind of get it. So it's kind of like if you ever were into baseball cards or anything like that, or know someone
Okay.
who was, the rarer the card, the more expensive it is, especially if it's in pristine condition. But they're extremely rare. You have to work to find them. They're out there. We just don't know where until we actually find them. And then we say, ha, I've got a card that's worth $1,000.
That's a good analogy. That's helpful.
Yeah, I could kind of put out there. I think that's been the struggle because I work for a financial technology company who's talking about, you know, doing some work on the blockchain. We're currently in mortgage servicing. So there's really, that space has not been explored yet, I think thoroughly. And it's interesting to see where that might go. I do think the struggle is with the terminology, and does require a high level of abstraction. And I think part of the struggle is, for me, sometimes some of the terms like mining, you try to match it up with what you know mining to be in the physical world. Because I know that's part of the problem, right? Is trying to find language to describe processes that are new to us. So
Right.
I think sometimes we get stuck on trying to be like, but how is it like mining?
Yeah.
Instead of getting to break down what are the specific things that are happening to solve these,
Yeah,
solve
that'd be
code.
an interesting, it'd be good. Interesting is to find a technical writer in the Bitcoin space. I'm sure they have many of them. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
All I know is that people who are really interested in Bitcoin recognize it as being the most secure consensus algorithm for transaction security, and they're probably right.
Yeah, the thing that I found fascinating was I didn't even think of, and I should have, but when you explained it, was that it's not just currency, how the blockchain is really just this big database where you can track everything.
Yeah,
Which
that's
I
all
was-
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, what I was looking at was how many of us and this is the whole problem with the terminology. The metaphor bridges the old to the new. Mining,
Yeah.
like if it's like this other thing, then I can learn, I can build on top of it and learn. But I was thinking of something like source control or something like Git, where you track the check-ins, you can track all the data. It's almost like, once I saw that, I thought, wow, you could really, when you were saying you could build a blockchain for something, I'd read what you wrote and I was like, what the hell is she talking about? But now I was like, oh, you could use it for a project. You could use it for, I don't know, your county fair.
Well, yeah, we call it sovereign, which means you own it. Application
Right.
specific means it has a single purpose utility. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I did have one TechCom question, which was, if you're editing a lot, how do you know when people have added content that, you have to go look at before does it go live? Do they add the content and it goes live immediately and then you have to jump on it, or does it come to you first? Are you the sort of the clearinghouse for all the contributors?
Well, if you're talking about the technical content or the code base, it all lives in GitHub. So everything in GitHub is transparent as well. So you see everything. And then every new content request that comes through, I get tagged to do a pull request review. But I don't have to be the one that review it. Other people could jump in and review it. But if it has any docs, I get tagged. Or if there's code they want me to look at, and I get tagged. And if it's a blog, ideally they ask me in enough time. And then I realized this week, I'm like, I have to give them this editing checklist and I want them to check all their links in advance. And I'm like, oh, I know how to do that. I'll give them a checklist. And then later, our blog is going to move to the website, which will be on the repository, and I'll make a pull request template so that before they can put my name, they'll have to check all the little boxes. So
I see. Oh, that's fascinating. Okay, so it's just a continual, and since everyone's working around the clock, it's just whatever you're tagged in, you pick.
Well, yeah, I don't know that everyone works around the clock, but yeah, I guess people are. Yeah, I guess they are. No, it's just like any workflow and we're agile. So, but oftentimes you just say it's good enough, and then you hope you go back later and fix it. But I tested it this week, and I thought, let me see how easy it is to do a pull request for another project. So I'm like, open source blockchain docs, and I found this doc, and I'm like, oh, look, they're using future tense. I want it to be present tense. So I went through the whole thing and I did a pull request and I wrote a nice little note. And it turned out I didn't read the contributing guidelines, and it was called, what was it called? Open Ledger blockchain docs or something, or what was it called? And I couldn't believe it that it turned out the person said, I really like all of these things that you did, but you didn't do this, whatever it is, statement of work. And I need to send it back, and you need to do this thing, and you have to put this certain format in your commit message. I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I just took all that raw file, make a new pull request, and I put the commit message in there, and I have to go back and check. The way it works for us is anybody who's on GitHub, take a little time, learn your GitHub, but you can get email notifications. You subscribe, and then you'll just get an email, or you can see a little bell in the top right, and you can check on your notifications that way.
I see. And one of the things I can, and maybe you can confirm it if anyone else has a question, is these are just popping in my head as you're talking. And I thought, tying it to TechCom, which is, I know that you're a style guide enthusiast, to put it mildly. You love style guides, and I thought, well, that is like, when you're looking at these job descriptions, I was like, if you're someone who loves style guides and likes to help people adhere to them, this is a great industry, because that sounds to me, as you're talking about what you're doing, I'm like, wow, she's really just sort of enforcing a style and editing checklists, all of these things that I have to say have not been my strongest suit. But I could see how, again, something that is sort of considered like stodgy with a style guide, just like editing is huge in this industry. I could see how you're drawing on all those skills and your love of a style guide.
Yeah. And it's interesting for us because every project has its own repository, and some of our projects are not public yet, so we can't use one, and now we use Notion. And anyway, so I have not developed this style guide. So what I did was I wrote our documentation contributing guidelines that we use the Google developer box, and we use this word list, and these are the exceptions. And that seems to be working pretty good. So what about anybody else? Is there a way that you guys could let me know if it was helpful, or was that just so crazy?
Yeah, thank you for sharing so much. I don't think we now understand everything because I don't know anyone understands everything. But you gave us a lot of really good information.
I hope that you find all the resources helpful. Everything that you saw, I provided links to. And if you don't have them, find me on LinkedIn or Twitter, just my name, Barrie Byron. Reach out to me on all these things. And WC, if you want to do anything hobby-wise, using any kind of technical communication background, it is kind of fun to dabble in the docs.
You haven't talked me out of retirement. Sorry.
Good try, though.
But if you guys have questions, it'd be nice and interesting to know. But the other thing is, most companies pay really well, and it's hard to get the jobs, and the benefits are good, and the whole mindset of blockchain is very competitive. So nobody can get away with paying low. But if you want to just dabble, I mean, I look for part-time ones, contract ones. There's all kinds of interesting opportunities to earn. But there's always a need for uncomplicating the complicated. But
Absolutely. I think we're almost at 8:30. So thank you, Barrie, for putting all those wonderful slides together, which were very pretty. We love pretty slides here, in addition to good
that's
content.
our new deck. That's our new deck for our rebrand.
Yeah, well, we enjoyed them. Thank you, Jessica, for setting this all up and, preparing questions and keeping us moving forward. I just want to say real quick, because I saw Lori joined. If I can just share my screen real quick. Just want to say, again, congratulations to Lori. Lori, I know you have to be quiet in a meeting, but we did want to say congratulations on being elected to the STC Board of Directors. And we're very excited for you, and a little bit for us too, but for you. So I know you can't come on right now, but I just wanted to say we were trying to acknowledge you earlier when you weren't on yet. So thank you for.
Yeah, we saw your picture, even if we didn't see you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are at 8:30. I think all the links are in the chat, and Jessica did just get the link tree in again not too long ago for Barrie's contact info.
And the GitHub page that Barrie, that you showed, the GitHub where it has everything that you showed us, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Go grab that and just.
That was my younger colleague, earlier career. She said, you can't give these documents. You got to put it in GitHub. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right.
It's fantastic. And I just want to thank you for blowing all of our minds. I feel like I need to go walk a couple miles and just sort of.
Well, I had a lot of fun. STC friends. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Barrie. Take care, everyone.
Bye.